Welcome to the future. It is 2040 AD and the world is technologically advanced beyond anything. Only people who want to work, go to work, otherwise they can just relax. AI has taken over the world in terms of employment. Raito is an ordinary boy who is pursuing a medical degree hoping to become a doctor. However, he himself is plagued by a disease. A disease that doesn't have a cure yet, but he can still survive using the technology of cold sleep. Or as they call it, hibernation. For as long as the cure for the disease isn't created, Raito would be sleeping, waiting for the cure. On his final day, Raito decides to confess his feelings to his longtime crush Arisa. Arisa can't give her answer, how could she? It was so sudden, but Raito doesn't mind. He can't ask her to wait for him for 5 years anyway. Raito then heads to the doctor's office where he would be put to sleep, alongside his big brother Ryo and little sister, Mahiru, the only two living relatives that he has. As he is being ready for the procedure, Arisa arrives there as well, so she does like him back after all. He gives her his locket as safekeeping and one again heads to his future. The procedure then begins. Raito is placed into a container and the liquid pours into it. The voices of his close ones start muffling, and just as he passes out he can faintly hear Arisa telling him that she would wait for him to wake up. Raito then opens his eyes after 5 years, and he is strangely surrounded by all female nurses, who all seem weirdly shy and aroused by him. Next to him is a purple-haired lady, who tells him that it's 2045, Raito had slept for his destined 5 years. His attendant Mira, the purple-haired girl, then takes him to a doctor who is on standby to check his vitals. Raito is then put in a limo where Mira explains to him about the MK virus. A virus so much deadlier than corona that it killed every single victim in just 3 days of infection. Even today, there was no cure, half of the world population was gone. Mira opens one of the window shades and shows him how the once technologically advanced society had crumbled back into a mess. Raito thinks it's all some kind of a sick joke, a prank, and he rushes outside jumping from the car to see for himself. What he sees shocks him. There was not a single man out there. Everyone was a woman and the world was nothing like it was before. Society had fallen into chaos. Mira and her guards jump to surround Raito and protect him from the horde of women around him. Mira explains that 4 years ago, the MK virus or male killer virus emerged and wiped out the male population except for him and 4 other immune men who were similarly frozen, and they are obligated to have children to save humanity from extinction. Raito, however, is adamant that he doesn't want to sleep around with hundreds of women just so that he can have children with them. At heart, he is still loyal to Arisa. So in order to convince Raito, Mira calls in his sister Mahiru. Mahiru, who is now a teenager, arrives and explains that their brother Ryo contracted the virus and had to be frozen to save his life. She also explains that Elisa, who was actively involved in finding a cure for the MK virus, also had been missing for the last 3 years. Raito is distraught, and he even gives Arisa a call. Yeah, right, if it was that simple. Arisa was truly lost. That night, Raito realizes just how serious the women were when Mira arrives in his room and starts stripping before him, asking him for his seed. Raito stops her midway and sends her away, but things are going to get more and more serious from here on out. Raito comes up with a plan. The next day, when Mira takes him to see the catalog of women that he could choose and impregnate, Raito asks for 1 month's time for him to find Arisa. He tells her that if there was anyone he would end up hooking up with, it would be Arisa and no one else. Mira agrees. Elsewhere in the same facility is another man. They call him number 1, but his name is Kyoji Hino. He is one of the other immune men to the MK virus, and was the first one to be awakened from the cold sleep. Unlike Raito, Kyoji is enjoying his life in this new world. Raito, on the other hand, finishes his meal and heads back to his room, and that's when he meets with Kyoji. Raito is really uncomfortable with how frank and calm Kyoji is with everything happening, while Kyoji can't believe how stupid Raito is for not taking the opportunity he has in hand. The two men part uncomfortably, and Raito finally reaches his room and decides to take a shower to cool down and process everything. Unfortunately for him, the woman that Mira had promised she would send Akane arrives unclothed in the shower alongside Raito, and tries to seduce him as Mira promised. She does a pretty good job, but Reta ends up failing because of all the pressure. When he wakes up, Akane is there by the sofa drunk, and on his bed is another small woman. Her name is Sui, and Akane were going to be with him for the rest of the days. That night he reluctantly sleeps platonically with Akane and Sui Yamada, as Mira changed her mind and assigned them to him instead of sending random girls every night. One of them was his bodyguard and the other was his nurse. The next day, Raito, Mira, Akane, and Sui examine Elisa's old laboratory for clues as to where she might have disappeared. Raito manages to get her stuff to be taken to his room where he can examine them. As the group is wandering around the lab, a strange woman in the shadows manages to release a literal bear into the premises. The bear approaches the group to attack, and Raito quickly jumps to save Sui as the bear walks toward her. Turns out the little girl was actually his bodyguard, and she literally ends the bear's life with just one kick to its head. When Raito learns Elisa was working on a cure for the MK virus, before she mysteriously disappeared, Raito decides to finish her work and appears on the news to relay his goal. Late that day, Raito finds a recorded message inside Elisa's old teddy bear, how convenient, where she reveals the MK virus is actually a man-made biological weapon. Despite knowing this mega secret, Raito decides to keep it to himself. Meanwhile, a council of women is having a meeting. They look really suspicious and seem to be the ones who have made this whole situation in the world. The council views Raito as a threat to their power and decides that it's time for another man to be revived. We are then taken back once again to 2040, the age where life was somewhat normal. Shota Doi is an introverted high schooler who pretty much gets bullied by everyone at his school because he has somewhat different tastes in music and life itself. The bullying the guy faces is relentless. Pretty much everywhere he goes, he gets tormented by his bullies. Especially Takamatsu and his girlfriend, Arisa, who just take so much joy in torturing poor Shota. His only allies are his sister Mayu and his music teacher Yuzuki Hanyu, the only two people he holds dear in his life. However, just like Raito, Shota also gets the disease sometime in 2040 and he too ends up in the same cold sleep. 5 years later, Shota awakens to this new world with no men and is attended by a lady named Karen. Karen tells him about the MK virus and its effects on the world, to which Shota reacts surprisingly well. However, Karen tells him that despite everything he is okay to resume his schooling in his old school. Shota is taken aback at first but then remembers that the virus probably killed his bullies already and decides to go to school. One thing that makes life a bit better is that his teacher Yuzuki is still alive, and she seems a bit too happy for him. So much happy that night, she comes to his room and offers herself to him. Shoto doesn't even flinch, and the two end up sleeping together. For the next few days, Shoto continues at school trying to get along with the other girls, but his heart is set on his teacher. That day when Shoto visits the nurse's office, he yet again meets with Yuzuki. And yet they end up doing it in school. A few days have now passed and Shota has settled down pretty well into this whole new world. He has been sleeping with Yuzuki pretty much every day. However, life with infinite possibilities when constricted to just one gets a bit boring. 1 week later, Karen drags Shota to the swimming class. He is reluctant at first because he has always been a nerd, but he has no bullying to worry about now, so he eventually agrees. That night, on little notice, Natsuo Chijo, one of his classmates belonging to a really rich family, is assigned to be his temporary roommate. Karen tells him because of a faulty AC, Natsu seems a bit too rich. She doesn't even know how to change her own clothes and asks Shota to help her out. The poor guy only has feelings for his teacher but still ends up helping the girl. All day after that though, he is troubled by super horny thoughts. He hadn't been seeing Yuzuki for a few days because she was on her period and this new girl was throwing herself at him every day. Shota's troubles keep growing, so he calls the teacher to ask her if she felt bad that other girls were coming for him too. Yuzuki tells him not to worry as he belonged to everyone, and she didn't feel bad about it. This was all Shota wanted to hear. That night, Natsu comes into Shota's bed explaining how she couldn't sleep alone, and confesses that her father gave her an arranged marriage to a much older man until they were both killed by the MK virus. One thing leads to another, and the two end up sleeping together. When Yuzuki finally returns, Shota confesses that he slept with the Chijo and begs for forgiveness. But she says they all know, and he belongs to everyone. This feels oddly strange to Shota. In fact, everything does feel that way. Almost everyone is always trying to please him, and nothing bad ever happens to him. Something was definitely wrong. He confronts Karen and demands answers. Was this whole thing just a big experiment? Was he just a lab rat? Karen is amused that Shota was smart enough to figure it out in just a few days. She takes him before the class and says she reopened his old school to make him comfortable so he would mate and repopulate the planet. Just to prove the fact that all the girls there were for him, she asks every one of them to strip and the girls just do it.
This is only the recap part 1 of this anime. Like this video and subscribe right now and you won't miss the part 2 video.
How was the video? We hope it was good. If so, please check these videos. Also, please comment down your thoughts and your suggestions for future videos. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing now to show the support to our channel. We hope to see you soon with another video right in this channel. Have a nice day.